Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all doing well. And today, my friends, we're back with the Tomb King vs. Khorne showdown. It's going to be Ark in the Black facing off against Valkia the Bloody, Forsaken Minotaur Rush versus the Nehekar Warriors and their spears in the back. Now, as far as my build goes, front line is going to be Nehekar Warriors. These guys are just a great rank and file unit. Yeah, they'll lose to most of the Khorne infantry, so if they're having to fight upwards into like Khorne Warriors or Forsaken, they'll lose, but they'll do okay. They have a bonus for infantry, they have pretty good stats, and it's to be expected. They're 300, 200 gold cheaper than those units, right? They hold, they do their thing. Secondary line's going to be Spears. Spears obviously make quite a bit of sense against the meta of Minotaurs, so most Khorne players are really excitedly using all the Khorne Tours these days, so having a big wall of Spears I think is quite helpful. Their damage output isn't amazing against the Khorne Minotaurs, considering that Khorne Tours do have 70 armor, whereas the Beastmen ones have 30, but even still, the anti-large Spears over a long grind can start to drag them down, and I do think it's very necessary. You can also go with Halberds, but they're quite a bit more expensive, and the problem with going with like the Elite Tomb Guard Halberds is they can often get tied up in combat by like Chaos Warriors and Forsaken, and they take a pretty bad trade there in my anecdotal experience, so I like to just bring the cheaper stuff and see how it does. In the backfield, one who shot the great bow, didn't want to go too heavy on just mass ranged, right? I felt like if I had like 3 or 4 great bows, Khorne would be able to kind of overwhelm my defenses, with their Minotaurs and their high mass and their Fleshhounds and Furies, and I wouldn't be able to adequately defend all of that ranged. So that's why we do have the who shot the great bow here. On top of that, Eyes of the Desert, Skeleton Horseman in the backfield, Ark in the Black with Spirit Leech and Buna with spells as summons, and it is going to be the King Nikesh's Scorpion Legion on the backside, the Arawar Spears. Now for my opponent's army, it is going to be a big old scary Khorne rush. So we have the Khorne Tours, Minotaurs of Khorne, backed up by the Forsaken. Forsaken of Khorne are kind of like glass cannons. They only have 15 melee defense, but their 85 armor does provide them pretty good mitigation against things like Nehekar Warriors and Tomb Guard. In general, they really cut through skeletons very quickly. So, arguably there's a pretty good case to be made for these guys as opposed to Chaos Warriors. Yes, the Chaos Warriors will last longer, but these guys can cut through them quicker, which will kind of inhibit the amount of Realm of Souls they get. If you're seeing that type of a build, you guys kind of catch my drift. So it is Forsaken. Minotaurs, Valkia the Bloody's obviously amazing. Sleipnir's really good. She's good at dueling any sort of a character. If they have Arkin, if they have Cetra, Kotep, whatever. Valkia is going to be able to get in there and deal with any of those big threats, and she's a really small, hard to finish off target. Whereas if you look at someone like Skarbrand can get focused down by like Eyes of the Desert and Great Bows and Spirit Leech. Yeah, you can Spirit Leech Valkia, but the rest of the assets aren't going to be as effective against her. So, a little bit of fast forwarding here as we do posture and get into position. We see the Minotaurs out on the far side, and it's going to just be a straight up fight. This is very much a Khornate rush, and they're coming for blood. So Spirit Leech going down to the Khorne Tours on the outside, and you're going to be seeing how the Forsaken of Khorne do. They look really cool. Obviously, their lower stats is a little bit unfortunate in terms of melee defense, but, Khorne, you got to work with what you got, man. You got to work with what you got. So some Spears going to be rotating in, forming a little bit of a wall here, and here comes the engagement. So Nehekar Warriors obviously do a little bit of damage back, but you can see the Forsaken on the Charger is so brutal. The Nehekar Warriors are getting melted super quickly, and the Minotaurs do push through, try to get on top of the Eyes of the Desert, which makes sense. They'll be able to win that fight. But I do drop some skeletons from Ark in the Black with his Tomb Blade there. And then we get the Narrows Incantation, the Liber Mortis down, which is going to be giving physical resist. So suddenly we have an okay trade there that otherwise would have been disastrous. So I thought some Spears would be able to kind of stop these bulls on parade here, and I was certainly wrong. These Minotaurs just get straight through, they go balls deep, and they're just bum rushing my Ushabti. So I was like, oh, okay, that's how those guys work. So in response to this, we're going to be bringing out some Horsemen as well as Sepulchral Stalkers, and we're going to be trying to defend here using Spirit Leech. The Great Bow's trying to get away, but overall that was a really nice engagement for Khorne. Now we are up in value. There's many engagements across the battlefield that are going pretty well. The Minotaurs here are slowly being dragged down, and these Minotaurs are also a little bit beat up, but he has taken down many of my high value assets in the backfield via the Ushabti Great Bows, so it certainly hurts. Now, Forsaken, they win the fight, but they took some damage in the process. You can see they're quite beat up. These ones win the fight in a straight-up manner. These guys, a little bit of an interference via my other units, and the Great Bows were shooting them. But overall, the Forsaken seem to do okay. But from a cost perspective, that might actually be slightly better for the Tomb Kings, because even though they lose it, Forsaken, I think, are like 800 gold, and my Warriors are like 500 something. So I do think that probably is advantageous for the Tomb Kings. Now, in the backfield, though, getting a little bit messy. Minotaurs overextended, but they are a really grindy unit, and their armor does mitigate much of the damage of the Spears. So you can basically just get those Minotaurs and like aggressively spam click on anything that's large that your opponent has and do some big work. Nice Sleipnir there from Khorne. Does hit some Skeleton Horsemen and Spears, although I guess it didn't end up doing that much damage, though. We are getting pushed back, though. On the far side, we do have some Tomb Guard Halberds fighting, and they're battling 2 Forsaken units, so they'll certainly be losing that fight, but they do have some armor piercing, so it won't be the worst thing in the world. And we do see some Fleshhounds trying to get through. So Fleshhounds try to creep through the tree line. So the Nehekar Horsemen, which I do think are one of the best light cavalry units in the entire game. They do defeat Fleshhounds at a cheaper price point and just have really good stats, and also Realm of Souls for healing. I mean, what's not to love? I mean, I think those guys and Reavers are just some of the best units. Valkia back here, I trapped her up with some Skeleton Horsemen, but she is able to grind through those guys pretty effectively. We do have a value lead, but it's a pretty darn small one. I mean, obviously things could change at any moment. The last of the Minotaurs here, at least the ones in the backfield, do get broken, but now more Forsaken, more Minotaurs moving in, and I am going to be sending some Halberds to the far side. Tomb Guard Halberds, figuring they're good against Fleshhounds, they have some armor piercing against armor, and also can fend off Minotaurs, are going to be going for that side objective. But, you know, despite having a value lead at this point and having a little bit of healing via Realm of Souls, not that much, I kind of felt like it was getting a little bit wild, like the Forsaken pushing up. And here's the thing. It took a lot of effort for me to kill the Minotaurs. It took my Great Bows, my Eyes of the Desert, my Sepulchral Stalkers are all very damaged. What's going to happen, potentially, is if Khorne gets rid of my anti-large and all I have are these like spears and skeletons, then I can start to get out-traded. So it felt like a very, very precarious situation. Anyways, archers coming in the back, just basic skeleton archers, putting a little bit of Daka here into the Forsaken, into the Minotaurs, and those guys are being dragged down. Eyes of the Desert, of course, are a halberd unit, but they still have decent general armor piercing and melee, so they can get through and they can put a little bit of hurt on a Forsaken unit. And the other Sepulchral Stalkers here trying to blast the Minotaurs, but it looks like Khorne is going to be stealing the middle objective. Currently, we are up by about 400 points here, and Valkia is so good against Sepulchral Stalkers. And let me explain why. So Valkia is infantry sized. You know, usually when you think big heroes and monsters, you can look at the tooltip and see the size of a model, right? So the Sepulchral Stalkers count as large entities, therefore anything that's anti-large will be good against them, but Valkia is considered infantry sized. So the Sepulchral Stalkers here only have 28 melee attack. Usually it's compensated for by their anti-large bonus, which helps them out quite a bit, which is huge. It's plus 18. But against Valkia, they'll do almost no damage, and they're just going to straight up get wrecked here. So I send in Ark in the Black to try and help, but Ark in the Black himself is large because he's on a horse, so Valkia can actually trade into Ark super well. So this is a little bit of a problematic one here. Now, Eyes of the Desert fighting up in the front. I'm going to be doing battle with the Minotaurs, but now the Minotaurs, the second wave have come in. Some of them are the dual-wielding variant, but their stats are so good, being Khorne with super high melee attack, that honestly, they can grind through some large targets too. So you can see a lot of my poor skeletons are kind of getting taken to a Pound Town here. On the other side, we do see some Exalted Bloodletters coming. Now, this was an MLG play, right? I summon a Halberd. I was not expecting this type of unit against Tomb Kings, right? Because you normally don't think you need a ton of like anti-infantry armor piercing, but it doesn't matter. The Exalted Bloodletters are just great at killing any infantry. So I was like, oh God, I'm just going to lose this point. I'm going to lose an 800 gold unit and get almost nothing in return. So I bring some Nehekar Horsemen, some spears over, and I'm just like desperately trying to hold on to this one. On the other side, it's going okay. There are Forsaken here, but we do have some Nehekar Warriors and Spears, so I'm hoping we can win this kind of 3-on-1 right here, but no guarantees. Khorne is a faction that individually their units are very, very strong. Like every single Khorne unit is really, really good fighting, you know, across the battlefield by itself, right? Whereas like Tomb Kings are pretty good individually, but nowhere near the level of Khorne. So as the fights get a little bit disconjointed, a little bit wild, it can become problematic for me. So here I'm going for a surround. I get my horsemen around the back. Unfortunately, I didn't get a good charge, but we do get the surround. The Tomb Guard Halberds move in, and the horsemen are going to be kind of just like, you know, limply piling in here against the Exalted Bloodletters, trying to get that full flank, but honestly, I feel like these Exalted Bloodletters are just going to be butchering all these units, and a really, really good pile-in from Professor Pone. He summons in some Fleshhounds, and I was kind of caught unaware, and those Fleshhounds are going to be just getting in there, big rear charge into my horsemen, and they are going to massacre them. Obviously, if they get the charge on the horsemen and the horsemen don't get the charge on them, it's going to be a very, very one-sided fight. I actually don't know who wins in a straight-up fight between Fleshhounds and Nehekar Horsemen. Maybe the Fleshhounds do, but I feel like it's not bad considering horsemen are cheaper as well. So I see how badly this is going, so I pull back the halberds, and I'm just trying to buy time for the Blessed Legion to come out so we get some archers. Blessed Legion does have some armor sundering, so it will lower the armor of the Bloodletters and help me DPS them down. Basically, I pull back, and I'm just trying to hide my skeleton spears on the side of the objective while the archers get some work. But I've lost the middle. The middle's been a complete flop. Over here was a disaster as well. The Minotaurs of Khorne in their sustained grind with the Forsaken, just so much DPS. They really, really just chew through my skeletons like butter, which is cool. It's awesome to see it. Obviously, Tomb Kings did get nerfed a little bit in the recent patch. They 100% needed it. I still think Tomb Kings are an extremely top-tier faction, But yeah, I think the nerfs were pretty good in terms of like leadership and Realm of Souls and all those things. Sleipnir are going to be coming down here. Really, really good one. Beautiful Sleipnir. Big damage against the Blessed Legion. In the backfield, Skeleton Horseman coming out. Going to be trying to salvage this missile situation. But Khorne has equalized the value, which is really, really not good. I was up by like 2,000 or 3,000 at one point. I had a big lead. But I would say when the Exalted Bloodletters come out and the grind in the middle got a little bit ugly for me, that really kind of changed the momentum of the game. And also Valkyrie is just in straight up hunting mode. She's straight Valkyrie mode right now. She's going to be chasing down Ark in the Black wherever he runs on the map, so he doesn't have too many directions to run as the Valkyrie of Khorne is on the hunt. We obviously will be able to kind of stabilize our backfield, but now we're in a triple cap situation. Our objective here is kind of slowly being flipped. More Forsaken coming in, high DPS, able to cut through my melee defense very, very quickly. And here it looks like we might have a stabilization, although I think these are Minotaurs, so probably not. Overall, it's looking really grim. So here, Fleshhounds are going to be dragged down by the Horsemen, but Valkyrie is just all over me right now, and I believe the Demon Shield is popped, I'm not sure. Her anti-large bonus incredibly pertinent. Ark in the Black is actually a really good fighter as far as casters go. He's got great stats, 40, 50, 450. But Valkyrie is a duelist. She was born and bred for this. And also, Ark in the Black is weak to fire, being a Tomb King's Lord. So Valkyria's fire damage also gives her an additional 20% damage. With her 460, if you factor that in, that is a lot of extra damage that she's going to be doing. So at this point, it's basically just me trying to grind back. Valkyrie the Bloody just hunting her prize. She actually kills Ark in the Black. I get some halberds out, trying to move up. But the problem is my halberds are countered by the Forsaken, which he has on standby. He's got the triple cap. He's got the value lead. And even with my Realm of Souls being taken into account, I didn't use a healing Tomb King's build. I didn't use a build that was kind of focused on spamming the Lore of Nakara passive. So I don't really have that much of a value kind of buffer via the healing. And look how quickly these Tomb Guard just get butchered by the Minotaur stacked on top of the Forsaken. Crazy stuff. You know, one of the first times I had experienced this. You know, I haven't had a chance to play too much Tomb Kings simply because they're constantly banned, or at least they were. But it was really, really cool to see a faction like Khorne able to just kind of really, really handle many of the common tactics that you see. Sword of Khorne going down. GG, well played to my opponent. Opponent did a great job that game. So, taking a look at the build, I would change some things. Ark in the Black was good, but I realized he just gets bullied a little bit too hard by Valkyria. So I have some ideas as far as a build that I think you know, Tomb Kings can totally win that. I actually feel like it's kind of an evenish matchup. I always felt it was Tomb Kings favored, but you know, with the new cost reductions to Minotaurs, I do think it's actually kind of a more of an even matchup nowadays from what I've seen. I've seen and had replay sent to me by several people kind of showing this same sort of thing happening. It was a close game for sure. The value was close. We had the objective lead early, but as the game grinded on and our good units got karate chopped, it got a little bit ugly. So what would we do differently? We'll go to the drawing board and take a look in just a second. Sepulchral Stalkers are really good. Grapos kind of get shut down. I needed more high mass protection for those units. But those Minotaurs, dude, absolute beast mode. Not the most value in the world. 3,000 on Valkyria. Forsaken probably did good. And yeah, 900, 700, 700, pretty good. Minotaurs in the back, 15, 16. I mean, just solid. 1,000 value on the Exalted Bloodletters. And the Fleshhounds were also very good. So GG, well played. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. And now I'll see you guys in just a second as we go over to the build screen. All right, so now we're here with the Tomb King. So I actually think I might want to go with Cetra. Like, I feel like spamming the Lore of Nakara spells would be a little bit more effective than Death. Granted, Death was pretty good at Spirit Leeching down the Minotaurs and whatnot, but I feel like just having that that ability to just heal your entire army is so good. So you're going to get Jaffs, and we're going to get the physical resist buff. So you're just going to be spamming those two spells just to get the constant heals. Crown of Nakara, you probably cut. Blessed Blade, I would probably... it does give the blinded, so like if you're attacking a unit of Minotaurs, you can really tank their stats. So maybe I would keep that, and I would probably put him on the Khemrian War Sphinx. Now, he's going to counter Forsaken. He will struggle against Minotaurs, but if you have the physical resist active and you overcast Cursed Blades on himself, overcasted Cursed Blades actually gives anti-large, so I think that's going to be pretty good. Now, I was happy with the Nakara Warriors. I thought they were very good. You could see for a 525 unit, they traded okay into an 800 gold, unit rush. So I like that. Probably Sepulchral Stalkers are the way. I felt like they were very good. So I'd probably open with 2 of those. And now we have our anti-infantry. We have a little bit of buffering and a couple spear units just to give you some something to kind of stand on top of. So this might be the opening army here. I don't like the idea of artillery against them. I feel like Fleshhounds, Furies, too much powerful mobility is going to be able to really disrupt you. 1 Carrion just to chase things off. So if there's like a Minotaur kind of broken, you can chase that off. I don't know about Tomb Guard. Probably Kepler Guard you want to bring in. I just feel like they're ubiquitously a pretty good unit. Tomb Guard Halberds is another thing. They seem to get wrecked pretty quickly, but I don't want to give up on them quite yet. Do we want to bring any Necropolis Knights with Halberds? I feel like the Minotaurs just outtrade them super hard. So I don't know how I feel about that. And Tomb Princes, I think, are a little bit overpriced for what they do. But Cetra's going to have some good support from the Sepulchral Stalkers, which I feel like are a pretty good unit. So I might even like throw a third one in there. They seem to perform well. Now we're going to max out on Horsemen. They give you good counterplay against beat up infantry and generally are pretty decent. Do we want Ushapti? I don't think so. I think Minotaurs just kind of handle them a little bit too easily. But I feel like we do need some anti-infantry tools here because overall we are hurting a little bit in that department. Now, do we want Tomb Guard? Tomb Guard, I think, should beat Forsaken simply because of their stat line. But I don't know. The Forsaken have so much armor. It's tough. Yeah, like dealing with that is no joke. Do we want like a big scary, like a big Sphinx? I feel like Valkyrie will trade well into that. And the Minotaurs just hit so hard. They just like get in there and do work. Maybe a Tomb Scorpion or like a couple basic Ushapti just to beat down on the Forsaken might not be a terrible idea. And from here, we can get King Nikesh's Scorpion Legion. I do like the idea of having a couple Tomb Guard Halberds. So we got one Tomb Guard Halberd in reserve. Let's cut one of these guys, get you. And then we just get a Spear unit to kind of max it out. I feel like this build could work. It's very, like, the problem is with this build, if they don't go super heavy in Minotaurs, then, although you do have plenty of answers, right? Like, Sepulchral Stalkers can fight Fleshhounds. They can fight, Coordinate Lords and monsters. Cetra on his Sphinx, plus the Ushapti, probably gives you adequate anti-infantry tools. So I feel like this build could have some teeth. I really do like having one Ushapti Great Bow, though, so maybe we find a way to get one Ushapti Great Bow in here, like maybe just cut you and get the Great Bow, like, Chosen to the Gods or something. I don't know, it's tough. So if we want to Chosen to the Gods, we would cut this, get you, and get Chosen to the Gods here. This build actually feels a little bit better. So you have the double Stalker opening. Nekar Horseman, yeah. You bring these guys out like once it's a little bit safer and once you stabilize against the initial push maybe? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. See you guys next time. And yeah, there's the theory crafting for today.